All right, so in the last session, I was describing how that there are three types of trend lines, right? And I was describing how that firstly, we have major trend lines. We have minor trend lines. And then we have internal trend lines. All right. And like I said, in the course of this session, we're going to be looking into each one of this. All right. And then using this to formulate our understanding or to build the basic foundation of our understanding of the concept of trend lines. All right. So I'm going to begin to share. Let me show you my chart right here quickly. All right. And this is a chart of Euro JPY on the daily time frame. I believe we can all see my chart right now. So this is a chart of Euro JPY on the daily time frame. All right. And the first example that I'm going to be showing us is the major trend line. All right. So if I were to draw a major trend line on this chart right now, based on where we are, this would be my major trend line. All right. And why is this my major trend line? The answer is simple. This is called the major trend line because it is the trend line that is drawn based on the most extreme lows and highs. All right. The most extreme lows, as you can see, these are the two most extreme lows. This low right here, this low right here. All right. Even though there are some other smaller touches here. All right. But it is the most extreme, all right, the largest extreme is what I just used to draw that trend line. All right. And then the second major trend line would be this. Yes, this. Now, permit me to say this quickly. Sorry, that's not what I intended to use. Okay, trend line. So this would be yeah, that would be the major trend line. All right. Now, what you need to understand when you look at this is looking at these two trend lines, you see that they are the most extreme trend lines possible. All right. They are the most extreme possible. And you see that price has reacted to it here. All right. Price has also reacted to it here. All right. And that means this is the major trend line. Now, for minor trend lines, all right, please, if you're following me, please let me know in the chat box. Let me be sure that I'm not speaking to just myself. All right, beautiful. So these are major trend lines, all right? And aside this, we also have what is called the minor trend lines, all right? Example of a minor trend line would be, say, for example, let me see. Okay, this would be a minor trend line. All right. And maybe we could also see some few, let me go to the 4 hours time frame. All right, so on the 4 hours time frame, we can see these trend lines. All right, that is a minor trend line, and you see, sorry, you see that currently price is reacting to that trend line. All right, so let's look at this. Let me change the color so it becomes easier to see. Let me use. All right, so that's a minor trend line. All right, probably I'll just make it a little bit thicker. Sorry. All right, so that's the minor trend line. All right. Now, for the example of the internal trend line, this trend line right here, this one, is an example of an internal trend line. All right, let me change the color of that too. So this is a minor trend line. All right, this here is a minor trend line. This is an internal trend line. All right, and based on this setup, the expectation is that probably price comes this way. All right, and then from that area, or maybe peradventure somewhere around here, maybe peradventure price comes somewhere around here, and then we can see this. Okay, so this is how the trend lines, all right, this is how all of these trend lines work together. All right, this is how all of these trend lines work together. So for me, because I'm also seeing that there's another internal trend line somewhere around here. Can you see that? I'm seeing that that's an internal trend line, and this is another block. All right, so the expectation would be that price comes back into this region, all right, to continue dropping further. So please, do you understand what I've explained so far? Please, if you have any issues with what I'm explaining right now, please let me know in the chat box. Does anybody have any questions? If you don't, just drop an emoji. But if you have any issues, please let me know in the chat box. Okay, cool. Now, this is something really, really important, all right, because so many things that the market does, so many reactions that the market makes, all right, does not really exactly happen from the point where most people expect it to. And that's because most times price often waits for certain areas, all right, these trend line areas. Price gets there and then reacts from there. All right. And that's exactly what I'm trying to show you. I'm trying to get you to become people who can trade these things confidently. All right. So let me see. Maybe we should take some further examples. Let's take some more examples. Let's go to another commodity. Let's do AUD USD. Let's take a look at AUD USD on the daily time frame. So we're also going to take examples of, major trend lines, minor trend lines, and then internal trend lines. All right. So currently this is on the daily time frame. All right. And there are a couple of major trend lines that are currently visible. All right. This would be one of such. All right. That would be a major trend line. Let me make that a bold line. All right. Zooming in a little bit, we'll see that we've had a couple of internal trend lines. All right. Several, in fact. That's an example of an internal trend line. All right, that's an example of an internal trend line. All right, Mr. Prince, I'm going to come to your question real soon. All right, that's an internal trend line. All right, and then we have several minor trend lines playing out right now. Of which this will be one. Let's go to the 4 hours and confirm. Now, I explained that an internal trend line is simply a trend line that has been broken before, all right, but market still ends up reacting to it. Okay, so one question that people often tend to ask me a lot is, how do I draw trend lines while the market is still moving? All right, such that I'm not drawing trend lines after the market has moved. And the answer I always give is this. All you need to draw your trend line, all right, especially if it's going to be a major trend line, all you need to draw your trend line is either 2 consecutive lows or 2 consecutive highs. All right. Once you have 2 consecutive lows like this, all right, and price has started going back up. All right, price has started going back up. At that point, you can instantly draw your trend line. Okay, and the assumption is that price will most likely go up higher. All right, give a higher high, and then come back to this trend line that you already drew. All right, because at this point, price has broken above above this previous high. All right, to give us a higher high, and the expectation would be that price gives us the expectation would be that price comes to give us higher lows here. All right. So this is how you draw your trend lines. All right. Let me recap again. So we've drawn that initial trend line, all right, because we have these 2 lows, and then we can draw this trend line too, because we have these 2 highs. All right. So as price begins to move, we expect price to make a movement into this zone, all right, or somewhere thereabouts, and then drop back here, okay, to retest this trend line. So that's how you draw your trend lines. All you need is 2 consecutive highs or lows, all right? And it doesn't even matter how far apart they are, all right? Because the farther apart the trend lines are, the stronger the trend lines are, all right? So you want to look for trend lines that are well spaced, all right, and have been touched. You know, the more times a trend line is touched, the weaker it becomes. So you want to look for a trend line that has been touched maximum 3 times, all right? Majorly 2 times, all right? Maximum 3 times. So as soon as I have this, I've drawn this already. All right, so let's go into the chart and see further example. All right, based on my experience, I know many people draw trend lines based on the bodies of their candles, of the candlesticks. However, I would like to say categorically that that is very wrong. Reason being that what you're seeing as a wick on the higher time frame is actually several candles on the lower time frame. All right, it's actually several candles on the lower time frame. And if you insist on using the wick on the body, all right, there are certain price movements that you would miss out on. So much that you assume that the trend has begun, all right, whereas the trend has not even started yet. All right, so it's important that you know this. It's really important that you know this, because many people draw trend lines. They just use the bodies of the candles and yeah, they draw the trend lines. But I have found out that many times, let me take, for example, this week on the daily time frame. This week you're seeing on the daily time frame of that single candle. All right. If we go down to the 15 minutes and view that same week, as tiny as it is, as small as it is, you discover that it's actually several candles together. All right, can you see that? That small segment that we marked on the daily time frame, this is it right here. All right, this is it right there. And it's actually a complete movement. All right, it's actually a complete movement of several candles, several, as you can see. All right, as you can see this, it's several candles, and then this will be our internal trend line. All right, that will be the internal trend line. And then you can see that it's actually an entire move. It's an entire move on its own. All right, this is why I need you to be able to understand this concept very well. All right, because your understanding of this concept is going to help you cash in on so many amazing trades. So many. All right, so when you want to draw your trend lines, it's important that what you draw your trend lines based on is something that is real, solid. All right, which is why I love to draw my trend lines from the weeks. All right, I make sure that the weeks are what I use. And another thing that you must know when you start working with trend lines is trend lines that are drawn from highs and lows that are widely spread apart. All right, really, really spread apart. They are not just major trend lines, but they are also strong trend lines. All right, the farther apart the highs are, the stronger the trend line. This is what I mean. Let me quickly clear this. So if you were to compare between this trend line, all right, and say say this trend line, all right, in my opinion and according to what I have found out in the market, all right, this trend line is going to be much stronger than this. All right, why? The reason is because this trend line, this second trend line B, has survived several market manipulations, all right? Several market movements, several market instances. It has survived it, and it is still, it still has the potential of acting really strong, all right? As against this one that, you know, there's every possibility that the next time price comes back to it, it gets broken. All right. So if you want to arrange trend lines in the order of their strength, all right, in hierarchy, you want to look for a trend line that, one, the space between the highs and the lows is really, really spacious. All right. You want to see some good space between the highs and the lows. All right. That gives you your major trend lines. All right. Two, you want to check the angle. You want to check the angle of the trend line. Let me quickly put these things on the board here. So first of all, you want to check for space or the span of the trend line. Secondly, you want to check the slope of the trend line. All right, I'm going to show you what I mean by the slope of the trend line. All right. Three, you want to check the count, how many times it has been touched. All right. Touches on the trend line. And then lastly, you want to check you want to check for accumulations around the trend line. All right, or price action at the trend line. So these are 4 factors that determines the strength of your trend line. So let's quickly go into the chart and see that. What I mean by the slope of the trend line is this. Can you see these 2 trend lines? This one here, let me use this. This trend line here, all right, this particular trend line, and this other trend line. Can we see those 2 trend lines? Now, what you have observed about those 2 trend lines is that it got broken quite easily. All right. This one got touched once, twice. The third time got broken. This got touched once, twice. The third time it also got broken. All right. And if you look at these 2 trend lines, you see that they are actually very, very steep. This is what I mean by this slope. All right. A trend line that is like this. All right. A trend line that is slanted like that is going to be much weaker than a trend line that is slanted like this. And much weaker than a trend line that is slanted this way. All right. So talking about the slope, all right, talking about the slope, if we were to arrange this in a certain hierarchy, I would say this would be the strongest. Followed by this. Followed by this. Do we get that, please? Please let me hear your views in the chat box. Do you get that, please? Or if you have any questions, does anybody have any questions so far? Where we are right now, do you have any questions right now? If you do not have any questions, please just drop a comment in the chat box and say no questions, or just drop an emoji if you have no questions. I'm waiting. Not exactly perfect trend line, but for stronger trend lines, all right? For stronger trend lines. That's what I mean, for stronger trend lines. Because in reality, there are really no perfect trend lines. All trend lines can be broken, all right? But we are just looking for something that has a fair chance of being, of holding, all right? We're just looking for a trend line that has a fair chance of giving us what we need to see. All right, so that's just it. So, all right, there are no questions. So let me quickly clear this. Okay, so let's take this out of the way. So this is what we do. This is how I analyze the markets, all right? And if you know, if you watch my analysis videos, this is one thing that you will know I do so well, all right? I do so well. This is another internal trend line, as you can see. As you can see, that's an internal trend line. Price entered into this other block, this zone, all right, together with this internal trend line, and we had this drop, all right? So I also talked about the consolidation or the accumulation around the trend line, all right? You want to see some kind of accumulation around the trend line so that you know what the market is about to do. And this is what I mean. Let's take this trend line, for example. Let me look for one trend line. Okay. Let's take this area, for example. All right. Let's take that area, for example. If we go to the 4 hours time frame, let me zoom out and take us there. All right, good. I'm about to show you my own personal approach to trading these things, all right? Because I need you to be able to understand these things in depth, all right, to the core. So what I mean by the accumulation around the trend line, this is what I mean. This is an accumulation. All right, that's an accumulation around this trend line. All right, we have, don't forget, this is the major trend line we're looking at. All right, this is the major trend line we're looking at. All right, but as price approached that trend line, can you see what we have here? Can you see what we have here? We see price give us this really nice accumulation and then breakout. All right, and after that breakout, we can see that there were several opportunities to get in on this trade. You know, this other block here, another other block here, this zone. All right. Now, however, what I'm trying to show you, or what I'm trying to get you to understand, is that the trend lines that you want to trade, you want to be sure that it's a trend line that has everything you need, all right, that has the criterias that you need, everything in check. All right, because these 4 criteria, all right, this 4, once you are able to understand it well enough and then combine it with the other things that we're also going to be looking at when we talk about when we start to talk about things like supply and demand zone, other blocks, high probability other blocks, and things like that. When we start to talk about things like this, all right, if you're able to combine it with this understanding of trend lines, you're actually going to be better than more than 70% of traders in the financial market. All right, you're going to actually be better, much better than at least 70% of traders in the financial markets. All right, so I need us to be able to understand these things practically. Okay, practically. So what you're going to need to do, all right, I'm going to be giving us assignments right now, and I expect every single person on this call right now, all right, to do that assignment. All right, I'm going to expect everybody to submit the result of their assignment without exceptions. All right, so quickly take a screenshot of what you have on your screen right now. All right, take a screenshot of what you have on your screen right now, these 4 factors, so that I can give us our assignment. Don't worry, go over the video that I highlighted in the group, and I can assure you that it will become much more meaningful. All right, so let's do this. So your assignments are going to be really simple, because I don't want to I don't want to task us too much, but at the same time, I want us to do something that works. So this is your assignment. So you're going to draw and identify all the 3 types of trend lines that I've shown you today. All right. And then 2, you're going to identify three-week trend lines with reason. Now, for the first one, you're going to, it's a simple question. Just identify the 3 types of trend lines: major trend lines, minor trend lines, internal trend lines. All right. But for the second assignment question, what I need you to do is the opposite of the things that I showed you as the determinants of strength of trend lines. All right. So maybe you're going to look for a trend line that is too slopey. All right. Maybe you look for a trend line that has how do I describe it? That is too tight packed together. All right. Or maybe a trend line that was broken because there was no accumulation around it or something, or the accumulation around it broke out in the wrong direction. All right. So I want to see these 2 assignments submitted latest by Monday morning. All right. All right. So the deadline on the assignment is Monday. All right. So how many of us have enjoyed tonight's class so far? Let me just get your review on that. How many of us have enjoyed tonight's class? You know, you've learned something, you know, you've upgraded your knowledge, and then you feel like you found something that you can work with. Let me know in the chat box quickly. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Keep the responses coming. Keep the responses coming. I want to know what your impression is. And please don't forget the patterns that I drew, all right? Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Prince. Now, don't forget the patterns that I drew, all right? So far, we've covered 7 patterns, all right? Please and please hold on to those patterns hard, all right? Hold on to them really, really strong. Beautiful, beautiful. Hold on to those patterns, these 7 patterns really, really well, because see, they are high probability patterns. They are really, really high probability patterns. If you can spot them, all right, and practice them, you will trade like a guru. You will actually trade like a professional every single time. Oh, beautiful, Mr. Prince. Now I understand where the issue is. Now I understand where the issue is. Don't worry. I'm gonna send you some other resources that might help you. All right. I'm gonna drop a PDF in the group. It's a PDF on price action. So I hope that it's going to help everybody. Although some of the things in the book, because I wasn't the one that wrote it, so some of the things in the book are pure junk. So you can just do away with them. But nonetheless, you can look into the book for confirmations of things like trend lines and the likes. All right, even though the presentation or the approach might be different, but don't let that phase you. Just flow with it like you would flow with. And if you have any questions, you can bring them back to me. The PDF with the chart patterns, you know, the ones that I am teaching right now, because they are personal patterns that I developed myself. All right. So I am still going to have to work on the PDF for that. All right. So I'm currently working on a detailed book that is going to break down all of these patterns. All right. Specifically just these patterns. All right. It's called the Templars Trading Manual. So I'm working on that PDF. It's going to be a really, really interesting book for so many of you to read. All right. And it's going to confirm and, or let me say, it's going to be a much needed guideline for all of these things that I'm teaching right now. All right. So everything is going to be broken down. So before the end of the month, I'm expecting that that book will be ready. All right. So that latest by first week of March, everybody has their own copy of that book. But please and please, I'm going to beg of us, all right, because I don't want this knowledge to be available to everybody, all and sundry. All right. So please and please endeavor to not share the books. All right. At least not without my consent, because it's actually going to be a book that I'm going to launch on Amazon. All right. It's going to be available on Amazon for purchase. All right. So please don't do giveaway with it. That's all I'm trying to say. All right. Make sure that anybody that is interested in getting this value pays something for it. All right. And as far as I'm concerned, I think that I am affordable enough. I think that I'm affordable enough. All right. So should we have one more session? Because I feel like I've exhausted what I want to show us for tonight. Should we have one more session? I don't know. I don't know. Or should we just put everything till tomorrow when we start talking about some other patterns? What do we say about that? What do we say about that? Okay.